So our next in-person event is the soccer game in San Jose, California. We're going to be tailgating with Brandy Chastain, who's a two-time Olympic gold medalist, two-time World Cup champ. She's in the Soccer Hall of Fame, and she owns the team Bay FC. So we're going to be watching the game, but we're going to be hanging out with her, which is a pretty cool experience. We do need to get the tickets this week. So if you're going to go to that, we really need to know. And Brandy is literally, you know, basically doing this tailgating thing. So we need to know from a food perspective and all that stuff, what she's going to need to pick up. So I'm excited about that. The US Open is locked in, so we're doing day passes for the US Open on August 30th. And Kathy can give you more information on that in terms of what ticket to buy if you do want to join us for the US Open. And then we have our retreat, which is filling up nicely, and it's called Living with Legends. It's at the #1 hotel in the Northeast, top 100 in the world, the Weekapaug Inn. And you will be not getting just a photograph, you will be leaving with a friendship with the 20 other guests, but also the legends, Robert Hamilton Owens, who I maintain is the most interesting man in the world, Joe Jacoby, an Olympic gold medalist, Mace Curran, second female to ever fly lead solo for the Thunderbirds, Megan Riley from Shark Tank and now a absolute killer keynote speaker, and Jackie Summers, who has the #1 most awarded liqueur in the world. So really, really excited about that. I hope everybody saw our billboard in Times Square for Outlier Magazine. The hardcover, hard copy came out beautiful, but the digital version is available for subscription for free. So if you have not signed up, I don't know what the heck you're waiting for, but Victoria and Kathy did an incredible job putting this out. I mean, people were stunned, I think, when they got it. And I'm happy to let you guys know that Melissa Cohen is also going to be our copy editor. So we are making sure that all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted. So trying to lighten the load a little bit. And Melissa was kind enough to offer her eagle eye so that the magazine is as perfect as possible. So I'm really, really excited about that. But I could not be more excited for today. So let me just give you guys the format because we do have a bunch of new members with us today. So the format for all of these Legend Series, Author Spotlight, it's always live and interactive. So we're going to do 30 minutes of kind of like a fireside chat with Kofi and I, and then we open it up for 30 minutes of live Q&A. So if you have a question, all you need to do is put in the chat, I've got a question. You don't have to write out what the question is, and Kathy will tee you up, or we'll tee you up, and you can ask your question directly to Kofi. But what a pleasure to have somebody who I consider one of our own. Lots of people that we have on join after the fact, but very rarely do we have somebody that's been such an actively engaged member as Kofi. And, you know, the day I met Kofi was a game changer. I remember meeting him and saying, how in the world does this guy only have 700 followers on LinkedIn? He should have like 70,000, because I felt like I spent an hour talking to Yoda, and just the wisdom is unbelievable. So let me give you a little background for those of you who may not know Kofi Douhadji. Kofi was born in Togo, West Africa. Uh, a little known fact is he was a big pop star in Togo. He is actually the one who sings the Outlier song. So if you have not listened to that, it is phenomenal. He is currently an officer in the Air Force. He's a two-time best-selling author. He's the founder of a sportswear brand called Duco, and he's the founder of a publishing company called Flying Wings. He's also an incredible husband and dad. So how in the world one person could do all that stuff is pretty mind-boggling. But we are absolutely blessed to have Kofi with us. Kathy, get us started. Kofi, my friend, thank you so much for joining us. Last time I saw Kofi in real life was at our retreat, which was an absolute blast. And before that, he had spent, right before he went back to Togo, he had spent the night sleeping over my house. And I think Meg went to bed and she's like, you guys just keep doing your thing. And we were up until like 2 o'clock in the morning telling stories, and I was listening to Kofi play the guitar. So thank you so much for carving out the time for this, my man.
Wow. Um, where to start from? This is such a great honor to be here with you guys, you all, you gals and girls and guys and everybody. Um, I've been on a couple author spotlights in the Outlier Project before, so being the author today is such a great honor, and I thank you all for making the time to be present here to spend some time and share some stories and tips and fun stuff together. Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who have not read his first book, this book, Unbroken Optimist, this is a page turner. I mean, you will not put this book down. It is phenomenal. So, it's a memoir. And Kofi just did an incredible job writing Unbroken Optimist. But it's hard to, you can write one good book. Writing two phenomenal books is unbelievably difficult. So if you haven't picked it up yet, I just love that. I'm obsessed with this cover, and I am totally obsessed with these cards. Um, his new book, Tiny Sparks, is it's just the easiest read. And what I love about it, Kofi, is, I always call you Yoda because I just think the wisdom that you have is so profound. But you're able to give these really weighty topics um, the space that they need, but you do it in such a condensed way, which is a hard thing to do. You can read 2 pages and you walk away with a golden nugget. tell us a little bit about why did you want to share after writing Unbroken Optimist? Why did you want to share Tiny Sparks with the world?
That's a great question. After Unbroken Optimist, I still feel like the book was a little too much about my story rather than the nuggets that I've collected along the way that I wanted to share. And there's been some cross content with Unbroken Optimist and Tiny Sparks in the sense that I actually started writing Tiny Sparks before Unbroken Optimist, but it just happened that Unbroken Optimist felt ready and done. As I always share with people, being done and being ready is a decision, right? So I decided that where Unbroken Optimist where was at was the full stop for that book to be published and share with the world. And then there's this story that is actually the foundation for Tiny Sparks and why I decided to get it out. When I was growing up, I was, as Scott said, born in a little village in the middle of nowhere. So we grew up studying at the candlelight, such a small place that you knew not just the neighbors, but all their pets that they had. So at night, since we didn't have toys or anything like that, we would just go into nature and play. So at night, if you see the cover, there's a firefly on the cover. That's from a game we played as a kid, where we would run after and chase fireflies at night, catch them, and then we'll go in a circle, release them all together, and you just see them flying away in the darkness of the night. It was just one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. And every now and then, a new kid who joined the crew and wanted to play, because they didn't know how to catch these fireflies, they would crush them. And when we get to the circle and open our hands, you will see a couple of kids crying because their firefly just fell off the ground instead of flying. And then we would show them how to safely catch them and gently release them when the time comes to release together. And it was so interesting to me how you would see kids laughing out loud in the dark. Their faces would just light up because they have now successfully caught a firefly and let it go unharmed. And that has sparked in me the desire to always share what works for me. Not necessarily because someone will need it, but because it might make a difference for at least a single person. And that thought was the beginning of Tiny Sparks, because every time I'm doing my long distance running, I would come to some aha moment, some nuggets. I'm like, a tree doesn't consume its own fruit, right? And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Right. And I have no clue. I can't claim credit for that, but it just pops in my mind. Things like that pop in my mind. And I started ruminating that, thinking about it, trying to understand what that means. And all of these little nuggets, I wanted to put them together and share with the world. And then once Unbroken Optimist started making being known around the world, I would run into people in airports reading the book. I would find people. One time I was in Las Vegas last year, and this lady came up to me and she's like, "Oh my God, Kofi." In the beginning, I would be surprised, but this time I was a little used to it now. So we had a conversation, and she insisted that I sign her book, but she didn't have it. So I had to go to my hotel room, grab a copy because I always have a few with me when I'm traveling. So I got a copy, signed it for her, And then she started asking questions about some of the nuggets that I shared in Unbroken Optimist. And then we had a short conversation about Tiny Sparks. And I think the two books are complementary in a way that there are things I shared in Unbroken Optimist, but not necessarily into details. So I wanted to single all those nuggets out in addition to some that I've gained after publishing Unbroken Optimist that are not in that book. I wanted to put them all together, and I wanted to make it in such a way that people won't need to sit down and read a whole book to grab what they needed. I want this to be easy, bite sized topics and insights that people can just pick one and reflect on daily, something like that. So that's how Tiny Sparks came to be. Uh, Someone asked me, who is Tiny Sparks for? Frankly, I do not know. I don't know who it is for, who it could help. But what I can tell you is that no mango tree, no mango tree is trying to become a bestseller at Walmart, right? The mango tree doesn't care what if oranges are selling more or not. The mango tree's nature is to produce mango. So it does that. Some seasons they fall off, they fall down to the ground, go rotten. But the next season the mango tree is going to produce mango again. It's not going to try to change to produce any different fruit so that people can have it. So from that perspective, I don't know whom I need Tiny Sparks, but I knew that I had it in me and I wanted to share it with the world.
It's such a great book, and I love the illustrations. So if you haven't gotten it yet, you're going to find these kind of beautiful drawings of Kofi running throughout the book, and it's visually just a very, very appealing book. I picked out a couple chapters that really, really spoke to me that I absolutely loved. And I wanted you to expand on those. And the first one that I really loved was the power of choosing happiness. So I think it goes along with anyone can be ordinary, but we all have the power to choose to be extraordinary. And so my goal is to get people to understand that being extraordinary is a choice. You didn't have to be born with Steve Jobs' brain or Michael Jordan's DNA. You can be extraordinary. And I think a lot of people don't understand that you can choose happiness. Talk to us a little bit about that chapter.
That chapter, the power of choosing happiness, stems from a deeply seated belief that I've always had. I tell people I've been through a lot, but how I feel internally, how I felt internally 20 years ago hasn't changed because I always choose happiness. In the saddest days, I am sad from a happy place. And the reason why I think happiness is a choice, and I deeply believe that, is because on any given day, we can write 500 pages of book that details every single thing that is going wrong in one's life. There are hundreds of reasons every single day that you should put up a pity party. But the same day, if you look around, there will be countless blessings and reasons to be thankful for. So, which way to go? If I go the pity party route, I probably will find people who join me in that party. But what is it going to help? Is it going to change the situation? I have tried. It did not change the situation, made it worse. But when I looked at the things that I could be grateful for and chose to embrace those, somehow you would find the bad stuff getting better over time. So I have proved to, excuse me, proved to myself that choosing happiness multiplies it, infects everyone around you, and as they say, a crab in a basket is always looking for a friend. And I don't want to be that friend who pull people into that basket. I want to get out and pull people up. So the choice to choose happiness is one of the best way to use our free will as human beings, because mind you, uh, no tree is able to move away from its roots if it didn't like that spot. We can. So the choice is ours to be either happy or not happy. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think I've seen many people with frown faces that look older than their age just because they've been putting that pity party up for too long.
I don't know where you come up with these analogies, but they're unbelievable. They're like we need a new book of just all the analogies. They're so good and powerful and unique. The next chapter that I really enjoyed is building your fear tolerance. Um, I think it's so important. And it's something that everybody faces. Um, Tell us a little bit about how do you do that? How do you build your fear tolerance?
Building fear tolerance, um, how to build that, it's founded or built upon self knowledge, um, paying attention to the things that scare you, and then making a list of those things and having conversations with yourself. Like, I'm scared of snakes like no one's business. But even the unoffensive snake will scare the crap out of my soul. One day I sat myself down. I was like, Kofi, listen, I get it. You can't deal with these little beasts, but think about it. Is it gonna kill you? No. Can you Do people have pets, snakes? Yes. Are they dead? No. But my primal brain is telling me no, snake, danger, run. uh, when my little 2 years old is like trying to pet a snake, I'm like way 500 miles away, making sure she's not bringing that thing over to me, right? But and then you start having those conversations with yourself, and you come to the realization that while our ability to be fearful is a great quality and a great tool to utilize through life, it's often misused by our brain. If you're not fearful, you see a lion running toward you and you don't run to save your life, it's going to destroy you. So being fearful is a good thing. But when your brain is telling you, don't go apply for that job, you might be rejected and your feeling is going to get hurt, is that life threatening? Not really. So if you start thinking about those things from that perspective, yes, it's like this mechanism that is built in us to help us stay safe and keep ourselves away from harm ways, can also become what is preventing us from stepping into our extraordinary life. So, few ways to do that is one, to have those conversations with yourself. And like I did, for example, I know I'm afraid of snakes. So I started going to the zoo, touching the glass that they're behind, and just walking my way, little steps, to all the way touching it and running away for my life. And eventually it did something. It's just awesome because as soon as I overcame my fear of snake, my fear of a lot of other things went really, really low. It's just like if you're working out with your muscle, you want to strengthen yourself in a way that you can pick up, let's say, 200 pounds. And once you do that, it doesn't matter if you're able to pick up 200 pounds of crab, gold, cotton. It's the same. If you pick up a different material, as long as it's 200, you will be able to pick it up. And I think that's how building that tolerance to fear. If you know your significant one won't approve of something and the fear in you is just burning, and you are able to overcome that and affront that fear, then that muscle, if that fear could be quantified, and if that's like, let's say we invent a machine to a device to measure fear, and that fear is like 5 on the scale, that means any fear that is 5 on the scale, you will be able to handle. And then you just keep building that up. It's like, okay, I go to a training, they're like, we're gonna shoot you in the leg. I'm like, what? And they're like, no, 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 not real bullets, but like blank bullets. Uh, your brain is like, Kofi, what if someone put a real bullet in that? But you become able, once you're front, you face that fear and you get yourself shot with a fake bullet. Then the next time you get a gun pulled on you, instead of running, you're more collected to manage the situation. So those little things will compound into you becoming more resilient when it comes to facing your fears. So those are some of the ways, and I'm pretty sure, Scott, you have some ways too. But those are some of the ways that I use to mitigate my fear and conquer them.
Phenomenal. Um, the next is reinventing yourself. I think a lot of people think they're on a fixed path, like they're on a path and they can't get off of it, which is not true. You can reinvent yourself. And I think you might be the poster child for that. So Kofi went from, being a music star in Togo, West Africa, to owning an engineering firm, to coming to the United States, to joining the Air Force, to starting a sportswear company, to starting a publishing company. It's like you've reinvented yourself already so many times, and you just consistently are evolving. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of reinventing yourself, or knowing that you can.
It's very, very, very important, Scott. Sometimes I do feel like I've lived at least 7 lives. Uh, and I'm just 38. I'm just starting, just getting warmed up. Uh, I used to be a civil engineer. And then 6, 8 years later, I was like, well, I'm not feeling like I want to do this anymore. Um, in the same time, I was doing music, and then I switched. I've done so many things. And the reason why I think it's very important to put, like, make reinventing ourselves something normal and encourage it, because as human beings, we are constantly evolving and rediscovering ourselves in new ways. So if you rediscover yourself in some new ways today, and you've been living a life that is no longer aligned with that, and you force yourself to keep doing the same thing you've been doing while you've evolved as a human being, it just makes life very complicated, in the sense that you're not aligned with what you're doing, and everything just start falling apart from that. Not necessarily falling literally apart, but internally you're not living a life of contentment and happiness. So it's just like there's nothing about a caterpillar that tells you it's going to become a butterfly unless you know about the process, right? If you've never seen the process and you see a caterpillar on the road, you won't tell this is actually a butterfly in the making. So being able to allow ourselves to reinvent ourselves when we gain more clarity and we figure out what we're made of, because we're so complex. Sometimes you feel like I know exactly what I need to do, and 5 years down the road you're like, oh, maybe this is not where I need to be. And that's where it's really important to allow ourselves to reinvent ourselves. But oftentimes, I think most people would say, well, I've already committed to this. I've told my wife I wanted to do this. I can't switch now. And then you force yourself to remain in that situation while you become saltier and saltier, and anything and everything is getting you irritated. And somehow you hold a grudge against people because you think they're holding you accountable. I think there's a big difference between being accountable and reinventing yourself. One time, someone told me when I did executive coaching that, Kofi, people are not going to take me seriously if I keep changing all the time. I was like, well, is that more important to you, or doing what your heart feels, that you know you're not hurting anyone if you want to switch careers? You're not, but you're definitely not giving your best if you keep yourself stuck in a situation where you internally generally know you shouldn't be there. So it's very important to allow ourselves to reinvent ourselves as much as possible, because that's what we should do. We are made to evolve and to change, and change is the only constant.
So can you imagine what the next 38 years for this guy are going to look like? It's exciting to even think about. I know I'm running out of time, but I'm still going to ask probably two more questions. I thought one of the more provocative chapters in the book was about being selfish.
Yeah, if you're not selfish, I don't want anything to do with you.
I love that. So he's just going to leave that out there. Tell us why you believe that.
Scott, how can you love me if you can't love yourself? I don't buy it. I think it's just a misunderstanding of the whole concept. And if loving ourselves was a tool, any skill you don't use, you don't utilize consistently, it gets rusty over time. So the the to me, as far as I'm concerned, common sense means that you take care of yourself and then you bring your best self to the table, and then everyone will be better for that. I've seen people going too thin because they didn't want to be selfish. um, Now, don't get me wrong, thinking of your own, the foundational definition of selfishness, that's not what we're talking about. But I think if we understand that we are one, oneness, connectedness amongst us, we understand that taking care of me is taking care of you. And when you take care of you and you are the best version you can possibly be, and you come to my table or vice versa, we can uplift each other. But I've seen people missing the mark on taking care of themselves. And oftentimes, the reason why I use selfishness in the book, oftentimes people would say, I don't want to be selfish. That's selfish. Doing this for myself, I'm not that kind of guy. So I wanted to provoke thoughts and you know, um, show people, not show people, share with people the perspective that to be helpful to other around you and to truly help them, you've got to take care of yourself first.
I think we have a record number of questions. So unfortunately, I am probably going to have to tap out, even though, so I'll just make these two recommendations. Embrace the Tragedy was another great chapter, and Lake of Life, phenomenal way to end the book. Check those out. But Kofi, you ready to get peppered with questions?
Yeah, I know I'm a talkative, but I'll keep it short so I can take as much
All
questions
right,
as.
guys, we're going to try to get as many questions in as we can. So make sure your questions are as concise as could be. Yarrow, we're starting with you.
Thank you. Hi, Kofi.
Hi, Yarrow.
Hi. I'm so happy to see you.
I just signed your copy today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I can't wait to read it. And sharing your audio version of Unbroken Optimism with my family is just, I'm enjoying it all over again. And it's wonderful. So I have
Thank
made
you.
notes of all of the insight, many of which you have shared today, these nuggets that I'm looking forward to reading, compiled, and elaborated on. So question, and you may or may not have actually had this struggle, but bear with me for my Yoda learning. Definitely I'm at a point where I'm taking all your insight of catalyzing, leveling up, and just going with it. But I feel like in some regards, I am like fighting against myself, like mental block wise. And it's silly stuff really, but it's just like getting over that hump that I feel like is harder than it should be. Do you have any insights on breaking through old mental stuff more efficiently, I guess, than trudging through the trenches?
Yeah, I think this can be very subtle, but it's becoming the person you want to become and rehearsing he rehearsing being that person. So every time your thought process is going back to right now how you used to think and you think, just stop yourself, and this is a new way of being for you. Stop yourself and say, what is the new Yarrow? How would she think about this situation? Where I'm going right now, how would that person approach this situation? And allow yourself to not be exactly where that person need to be, but by thinking about that and just having that conversation internally with yourself, would the new version of me and who I want to be, because we don't get what we desire or want, we get what we are. And how do you become that person if you don't try to be that person? So have the conversation with yourself and think, how would hypothetically Yarrow think about this situation, that Yarrow, and allow yourself to be, even if like it's something that is scaring you, tell yourself you're not doing it. You just want to get into the mindset of that person. It's okay if you don't want to do it, but think about it. And then over time, you're going to see things are going to start shifting for you. I hope that helps.
It helps. Yeah, reframing, I feel like just blows the wall right down. So thanks, dear.
Absolutely.
Carl McAllister, you're up.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Carl.
So my question is in reference. So like right now, my grandma is kind of like on her last leg, where my family just put her on hospice, and she's been like my rock for as long as I remember. And so as she's kind of like, transitioning to the other side, it's been very, very, very difficult for me. And so my question is how to choose happiness when you're kind of going through your storm.
That's a good question, Carl. And my heart goes out to you for that situation. It's not easy. Never will it be easy. to be in that position, especially with the relationship you have with your grandmom. So my heart goes out to you, full support. Uh, but one of the key lessons my grandmom too told me, shared with me over the years is that uh, don't be sad something is ending or has ended, but be grateful it happened. Right. So when you focus on all the beautiful things, the lessons, and everything that your grandma shared with you, how can you possibly utilize that right now to be on her side? Because the inevitable for all of us included is that the time has come. And when the time has come, is it better to help your grandma have the best memories of you when she's getting out, uh, rather than having a memory of you being down? I think it's a way to actually pay her back by showing her she may not be able to see you like she used to, but trust me, energy doesn't lie. She will feel it by showing her that you are actually utilizing the strength that she gave you and that you will be here representing when she makes it to the other side to support her. At the end of the day, brother, we cannot change what's going to happen, but we can make going through the storm better. I think laughing through the storm and dancing through the storm is not going to change the storm, but it will change how you go through it rather than crying in it. Even though the storm might hide your tears, but you won't be changing anything and you would add in more burden on yourself. So I would recommend dancing through the storm and showing your grandma the man she raised.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
My pleasure, brother.
Man, could you have gotten a better answer? That unbelievable. Paul, you're up.
Oh, Kofi, such a full circle moment, being that you were the one that brought me into the most amazing community in the world. I'm curious for you, having written two books, and I know you write every single day. What was the biggest kind of takeaway or unexpected thing that you learned from writing Tiny Sparks that you didn't expect?
That we give ourselves too much credit, that if you want to write a book, go for it. I believe that I don't take credit of the things I put in Tiny Sparks because I didn't make them up. But when you align yourself and you make yourself available, I view myself more like a conduit writing Tiny Sparks than me using my intellect, my brain. I'm smart. I want to tell people how to do or how to perceive perspective on things. But I think when we understand that we are connected to the universe and that we're just an opportunity for the universe to have a different flavor about her itself, then you realize that even the craziest ideas that might be intimidating to you, you can handle it because actually it's not actually you doing it, but you have more to you than you are aware of. So I think writing Tiny Spark made me realize that I'm just a conduit, nothing else, nothing more.
Yeah, that was powerful. I'm so happy for you, my friend. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bruce Chutan.
Kofi, my friend, it's so great to hear your wisdom and to see your smiling face. Your latest iteration here, helping first-time authors get their book published. How do you quantify or describe the value of getting a book out there?
That's a good question. I think what I share with people is very less about the book, but more about what they become with the book. Writing a book, I think, is going to help at least one person, and that for sure is the author the person writing the book. And regardless of what you want to achieve with your book, there's going to be and before you publish a book and after you publish a book type of life. So I do my best to show people what the outcome is going to be and the benefits that are tied into writing and publishing a book more than the book itself, because the book itself is so limited, but when you look beyond that, there is a lot more to it. Whether you want to use it as a business tool, I think, as Tim would tell you, a book is like a business card on steroid, right? If you want to share your message with someone, you can't possibly just knock on someone's door and get in their bedroom, sit by their bedside and tell them what you want to tell them. But your book can, right? So there's so many advantages to what a book can do. And if you think about what you want to achieve through your book, instead of sitting one-on-one and daily, weekly, monthly with people and talking to them through a book, you can do that at many spaces, at many times, all at once, while you do other stuff with your time.
Love it. Sunny, you're up.
All right. Well, Kofi, in the spirit of reinvention, I am pulling a card from your deck, both figuratively and literally. And one of your cards says, life is like a tree that grows and adapts with each passing season. Just as a tree sheds its leaves and transforms in preparation for the changing seasons, so must we be willing to shed your old ways and reinvent ourselves to reach our full potential. So I'm curious, in the spirit of that, what is something you have recently shed in your life to be able to create space for new?
I've always wanted to get a PhD degree. Started at one point, dropped out because I realized I wasn't spending time with my kids. I can always go back to school. But my son is only gonna have one life. If I miss when he was 2 years old, I will never be able to be there again at that time. And I would always miss what I could have done. So I try not to create any situation where I'm regretting anything. So I had a shed of that desire to get a PhD during this season of my life and drop out. 2 months ago, the Air Force offered to send me to one of the most prestigious colleges in the country to do my PhD, where I don't need to wear my uniform for 5 years. They'll still pay me, I'll still promote. But I said no to that opportunity because during the current season of my life, I want to be there for my kids. And when they're gone, I can always go back and get my PhD. So that's one of the things I think I have recently let go of.
That's heavy and puts such perspective, just like everything else that you constantly pour into us. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Vikram.
Hey, Kofi.
Hi, Vic.
I'm here with one of the coolest outliers in the whole wide world, Mark Holden, and I think our caps are pretty similar, brother. So that's great. I think the whole question around reinventing ourselves over and over again, I'm actually kind of going through that process. And if you could share with us your top 3 leadership lessons at every given point in life, you're going through it, you got to reinvent, because stages in life require different leadership chops, in my opinion. So what are those consummate core 3 beliefs or 4 that you believe in that's going to take you through different points in life? Clearly, every situation demands a little bit of flexing different parts of your being. So holistically, what would you say are the three things that has taken you through different parts in your life?
I would say the first one is self leadership. Uh, Most of the time, leaders, everybody want to lead someone, but we forget or overlook oftentimes self leadership in the sense that there's so many things about ourselves that we need to lead first. Um, so when you're in that position where you need to reinvent yourself, you need to reinvent your team, you need to take a different direction, we often look at the external things and we say, well, I could do that now, but it's raining. Well, I could do this now, but my boss would say this or that. So we constantly, it's so easy to put the control outside of ourselves. But once you start looking inward and looking at that self leadership, uh, actually, self leadership is a lot harder than leading other people. But once you start looking at that perspective, you tend to have more control because oftentimes it's not that we don't have control to reinvent, but we overlook the control we have and we seek that control elsewhere in other people, in the weather, in the economy, in how the housing market is going and everything. But once you look inward, I think it shifts everything, and the little tiny control you have become impactful because it's not about the size of the control, but it's how much you're utilizing the little control you have. So self leadership. The second one, understanding that we're all interconnected. When I'm making a decision, whether I want it or not, is gonna have some type of impact on other people around me. So once you lead yourself and you take into consideration that what you're doing is gonna have effect on other people and other beings around you, those two things are gonna help you make that self leadership. And then the next thing, which is decision, right? At one point, you've got to decide to take action. You got to make a choice. And I think there's never a right or wrong choice, but there's always people who won't choose and just will let themselves go with the flow because they don't maybe want to deal with the outcome. Because I've been in position where I'd be like, oh, it's not me, it rained, right? But it feels better as human beings, as far as I'm concerned, when you have an scapegoat or something that you can blame other than yourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like the human condition. But I think with self leadership, uh, understanding that we're connected and we're one, and also making decision to take action, those three things would be the main things that would guide, I think, toward that reinvention to the best of our abilities.
So good. So good. All right, Kimberly.
Hey, Kofi.
Hi, Kimberly. Long
It's
time no
amazing. You were
see.
just right there.
Yeah.
When we, oh my, when we finished our time together, and we asked what was happening, you said still processing.
Yes.
And I'm curious, now if there's so many insights that kind of pour through you, and I'm curious if there's one in particular that you turn to when you start your day.
When I like
When you
just in
start your
general.
day, like just in general, when you start your day.
When I start my day, I don't think about anything. I just start it. But I think one of the exercises or habit that I have is the gratitude exercise where I start my day with counting my blessings. I think, yeah, as soon as open my eyes, I'm like, wow, I have a house. I'm sleeping in a bed, and I'm saying those things to myself. My poor wife, she'll be like, we know, can we just like move on and get to the next thing? I'm like, no, I gotta remind myself of all this thing. And as a joke, she'll start helping me so that I can get through it quicker. But what that did over time is that now she's part of the gratitude team. So I think gratitude is yeah, how I start my day, just by deliberately out loud telling myself, look, Kofi, you live in the United States. You do this, you do that, and I just keep those going. And on days that I can, I actually write them down with a pen. I have some of my journals. You take them, it's just like filled with the same thing over and over again. Tomorrow, yes, I wrote it yesterday, but I'm gonna write them down again for at least 5 minutes, just reflecting on them. So I think gratitude would be my answer.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Jeff, you're up. And then Lindsay Dowd is our cleanup hitter.
Hey, Jeff.
Do we lose Jeff?
Hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, how are you? I posted this, but I was wondering to what degree could we get these universal concepts into our education system, junior high, high school, so that we're starting at an earlier set point in life?
That's a great question. That's a really, really great question that actually I have been talking with the Washington Policy Center in Washington State. They're trying to do some reform of their education system there currently. It's a big fight going on, but I think the best we can do is to start with our nuclear families, right? Start at home, and then someone's in this group is part of the decision makers when it comes to the curriculum that we teach in our schools. So instead of waiting to put the schools in the control seat, we can start with our kids at home while we change the policies, while we go through the government uh, process and the all that those long-winded process, which eventually will change because you and I are the people and we can make the change. But if we start thinking, well, how can we make it into the government so that everybody can do this, so that it becomes something we're teaching every kid? I think we can start at home. While if I'm in a position where I can start a petition or support someone who's uh, trying to change the curriculum in my school district, be participant in the change, because oftentimes people say, well, how can we make this happen, and then they back off. They are waiting for someone to do it. So I think it's difficult because that involves politics, and there's a lot about that Jeff. But we can definitely start with our nuclear family and the people immediately around us, by saying, hey, when my kids come back from school, we don't necessarily need to talk about the things they've learned in school again. We can see the thing they have not learned and try to add that to help them. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Jeff.
Thank you, Kofi. It's insightful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lindsay Dowd, take us home.
All right, Kofi, the legend, you have done a million things. As you even said, you've lived how many lives? 7 lives, 8 lives? What's next?
Lindsay, I don't make plans. I just wake up and do stuff, and my plan comes in place when I start doing something and it's taking long. But I don't know what's next. I'm just gonna wake up tomorrow. I want to be helpful as a human being around me, to my family, to my people, to my community. That's next. but how I'm going to do that specifically, tomorrow will tell.
Well, you inspire us all. Thank you, friend.
Thank you.
Kofi, this has been such a fun hour. Your wisdom is overwhelming. If anyone was wondering why we chose Kofi to write the feature article in our inaugural issue of Outlier Magazine, now you know. So if you haven't read Finding Purpose by Kofi, make sure that you do. And let's make sure we support Kofi. You know, pick up a copy of Unbroken Optimist, pick up a copy of Tiny Sparks, leave a review on Amazon. But, you know, here you've got a guy who is serving our country, if you're in the United States, and does nothing but try to help people. I would also say if you're thinking about getting that book out of your head and into the world, you probably couldn't pick a better guy to work with than Kofi to make that happen. So Kofi, man, you know I love you to death, and I appreciate you big time. This was a really, really fun hour, so thank you.
My honor. Thank you, everyone, for your time and your attention and the space here to exchange together.
Love it. Love it. Thanks, Kofi. What do you have for the rest of the day?
We are flying to Washington with the family, so we are going to be at the airport the next 45 minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
Get your bags packed, safe travels. And thank you again for joining us. This was tremendous.
Thank you all. Much love.